Everybody here should be able to write this story. I shouldn't even have to give it. If Coach Bryant was up here 40 years ago, he would be saying the same thing. Pleased with this year's recruiting class, filled a lot of needs, got a lot of character quality guys in this class. So did anybody need me to say that, or could you have just wrote that on your own? Doesn't every coach say that after recruiting? Just like you never have a bad spring practice. You ever hear any coach say you had a bad spring ball? So, but you know, there's a lot that goes into, you know, a recruiting class. I think there's a lot of people here at the university who do a fantastic job of helping us recruit. You know, first of all, our assistant coaches do an unbelievable job. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of travel, a lot of missed family time, and certainly did an outstanding job this year. The people in the university community here, from Dr. Witt, President Witt, you know, right on down through the university community, our deans, the administrative staff in our office here who set up the weekends, do a great job in terms of academics. John Deaver and his staff and academic support. We could just go on and on and on of how many people contribute to the success of having a good recruiting class. Our players, you know, do a good job of hosting and engaging with the players when they come here, making them feel part of, you know, our team, our family here. So there's a lot of people responsible, you know, for all this. Our fans, you know, attitude relative to their passion in terms of why players would want to come and play here, because of the atmosphere and environment that they create, in terms of our games, as well as the support throughout the state, on the street, and their positive attitude about the kind of program that we have here. You know, I think all those things contribute to the success here at the University of Alabama. So the challenge for us as coaches is to help these players mature and develop, you know, into all that they can be. And I think that, you know, I've commented on this before, you know, just because you pick the best puppy dog with the biggest feet, that doesn't mean he's going to grow up to be the best hunting dog. And, you know, a lot of these young players are very good, they're very talented, they've had great success as high school players, but they're going to make a tremendous amount of improvement, almost probably as much from the time they were freshmen in high school to their senior high school. They're going to do the same thing in college. And I think the challenge for us is to help these players develop so that they can have success, not only on the field, but in the classroom, and to continue to develop, you know, personally, academically, and athletically. And we want to be able to shape these guys into people who can be more successful in life because they were involved in the program, and they have a tremendous amount of success here, personally, academically, and athletically. So that's really the challenge, I think, for us as coaches, and for these players to have the right attitude about what it takes for them to be successful as players, to be a complete player, to do the things they need to do at their position. To be a complete player will obviously enhance how rapidly they do improve and develop into very good college football players.
Coach, I have a two-part question. First, was anything unique about this? You have players from California, Ohio, North Carolina. Was anything unique about this recruitment?
We look all over for players, and we try to get the best possible players on our board. I think recruiting to a large degree is a little bit of a numbers game. We have an evaluation system. The more players that we can get on our board that pass our evaluation system, that meet the criteria for what we want for a position and have the athletic ability to meet those criteria, the size and speed to meet the criteria, as well as the character and attitude and intelligence that we're looking for, you know, in our players here. The more guys we get on the board, if we're going to bat .333, 1 for 3 in baseball. So if we have 90 guys on the board, we'll be able to get 30 good players. If we have 10 good players on the board, we'll only be able to get 3. So that's kind of our approach. So, Sometimes we have a lot of really good players in our state. Sometimes there's a lot of really good players in a 5-hour radius, so we'll obviously have less players from further away that we'll have to be looking at in recruiting. But recruiting is so global now I think we have a very recognizable program. So for us not to take advantage of guys that are out of our 5-hour radius that are interested in Alabama would not be in our best interest. And I think that we got some very good players this year from far away.
And the second part, this class is smaller than some of the previous classes you've signed since you've been here, but you also had a small senior class and 3 guys turning pro. But could you explain again for us how those numbers will work out?
Well, I think that there's been quite a bit written about over-signing, so to speak. But we have never gotten rid of a player because of his physical ability. And any player that has left this program prematurely has created his own exit route. He's created his own conditions for leaving, if that makes any sense. Whether they're academic in terms of not doing what he needs to do academically, whether there's some violation of team rule and policy, whatever it is, some of these things we're not allowed to comment on. But, we have so many seniors. We have some guys going out for the draft. Nobody really knows for sure how many guys we had on scholarship last year, but we didn't have 85. I can tell you that. We have some people who could not finish the season who will probably not be able to continue to play. That can be replaced. And we have several players who can graduate and may not come back for their 5th year who have been redshirted. So when you add all these things up, plus we have guys that may not qualify. And there may be a guy that may not appear on this release that was committed to us that may already be in junior college someplace. So there's all kinds of ways but to criticize based on numbers when you don't have all the facts and you don't have all the internal information, I think is a little premature and unfair. And then for people to go on and use that against you in recruiting is even more unfair. But this is the number of players that we could take, and we could add 1 or so to that if the opportunity presents itself in the future. And we do have some guys that may gray shirt. And let me address that too, because I think there's a lot of criticism in gray shirting that is unfair. First of all, we have never ever gray shirted a guy here who, when he decided to come here, didn't know the circumstances that we were going to take him to the University of Alabama, that he was going to be a gray shirt whenever he committed. And the reason is sometimes academic, the reason is sometimes physical development and maturity, but those are the reasons. But never have we not a player known, sometimes if they're hurt and physically can't perform. So there's reasons for it, but they're always done up front. We've never ever not done it up front. So the player comes here with the idea that I'm going to start school in January. Now, I do not think that that's a bad thing, because if we weren't able to do that, those players would not have the opportunity to come here. They would not have the opportunity to come here. So we're actually creating an opportunity for a guy to be able to come here, not taking one away. And that's where I think there's some disconnect out there in understanding of what gray shirting really is all about.
You mentioned you still have a number of possible guys that could be out there, at least one maybe. But Brent Calloway was a guy who was committed to Auburn as recently as a week ago. Can you talk about the process of landing him?
He was committed to us for a year.
Yeah.
And, he dismissed it for a while. That's all. That's all I can say about that. And then he came back here and visited and decided that he wanted to come back here. I mean, it's tough on these guys. I mean, it really is. I actually wish that if we want to make a commitment worth something, then when a guy commits, people should stop recruiting him. And in the Southeastern Conference, when a guy commits, that just makes him a target. It's not like that everywhere in the country. It's really not, but it is that way here. So we expect it. We're not really upset about it when it happens, and we try to manage it. And hey, we got a couple guys too, so I'm not saying we're squeaky clean, because there's a couple guys that we got that were committed to someplace else, and they decommitted to those places, and they were interested in Alabama, and we continue to recruit them. But it's just the way people do business here in the Southeast Conference. Now, I wish it was a different way. Now, when I was in the Big Ten, we had a gentleman's agreement that when a guy committed, we stopped recruiting him. If the guy called you and wanted you to recruit him and he was committed someplace else, then we contacted the other school and told them. So they knew, so that everybody could manage their business better. It's hard to manage your numbers when you think you got this many guys and then all of a sudden they're not there anymore. And you didn't recruit somebody else because you thought they were coming. So, but we're pleased to have Brent. We think he's one of the best football players in the state. Certainly could play on either side of the ball. He's going to start out at running back here. We had a tremendous amount of success, in high school, so we're excited to have him on our team.
You also mentioned the global reach of recruiting. Can you talk about what it took to get Jesse Williams?
I tell you what, I wanted to go on a home visit to see Jesse Williams' family more than any player we ever recruited. And when we got into the logistics of getting there and getting back, it was a 3-day trip. And I could never figure where to get that in there. And that was one that if I went, I think Miss Terry was going with me, because there was no way I was going to go on a recruiting trip for 3 days to see one family. And he wouldn't even have been there. But I think it all started just because we had a good relationship with the family. They were in Australia, great people, absolutely fantastic people. And Jesse was in junior college here and a very good player that passed our evaluation. So we spent a lot of time with the parents on the phone, video conference, so they got comfortable with us. But Jesse's here in school right now and, doing very well, and we're very pleased and happy to have him, but we think he's got a possibility of being a guy that can help us immediately, and certainly looking forward to his development this spring. But that was one of the most interesting, recruiting. But it's amazing, he's not the only person from Australia around here. I'd go to my radio show on at least 2 occasions, and somebody told me when he committed to us that I'm glad we got Jesse because I'm from Australia too. So there are a few people down under in Tuscaloosa.
Coach, earlier today you mentioned HaHa as a player with a lot of character. How does a guy like that impact other recruits in his class?
Well, I think HaHa is a guy that was the top guy at his position. And he committed early and never, ever once wavered, and I would always be worried and call him and say, "You sure you're okay?" Because people were hammering him for the last 6 months. And never ever fazed him, never ever, just always knew what he wanted to do, and was anxious to try to help us recruit the best players that we could get. And he was anxious to get here and get started and do everything he could to improve as a player. And their team went to the finals, this year, so he got to play a lot of football. We actually practiced on their field at the bowl game. So he did watch us practice a few times, even though we couldn't have contact with him. But I just think, and I watched him practice when I went out recruiting, and just his presence on the field and how he affected other people was something that really impressed me. And just the fact that you expect a guy like that to get a lot of attention in recruiting and to never be fazed by it, speaks a lot to me about not really caring about the attention, but being focused on what he wants to accomplish. And I just think that's a special kind of person.
Are there any other signees that have stood out to you in terms of leadership qualities like you just mentioned?
Oh, boy. I think we have a lot of good players, in this class. And I think, Trey and Vinny both. And maybe because they've been here, so they were involved on a couple of recruiting weekends. You're talking about guys that are, I mean, they're everything you could wish for if your children grew up to be like them. You know, I mean, they got a lot of ability. They're hard workers. They're very committed, but they're very personable and caring for other people and can put somebody else ahead of themselves in terms of, you know, what they're doing and what their commitment is. So those two guys have been very impressive to me as well. But we're not disappointed in anybody, so I don't really want to. I'd have to look through the list, but I think those guys especially are, you know, those types of people.
Coach, can you talk about the recruits when they enroll in school early, how that gives them advantages to be able to start and go through off season and get acclimated to the college life before
Right.
next fall?
Well, I think there's probably a couple advantages, even though I think there's probably some disadvantages too, for them personally. No disadvantages for us as a team, but out of compassion for the player, we never really encourage guys to come in at mid-semester unless that's what they choose to do, because I think they have to be committed to that to make it work. Because they missed their senior year. If they play another sport, they don't get to play that. They don't get to go to the senior prom. I mean, there's a lot of things that you never get to go back and do. You know, I was growing up, I couldn't wait to get to high school. I couldn't wait to get my driver's license. I couldn't wait to get to college. I couldn't wait to graduate, to get a job. And now I wish I could go back, just any kind of way, go back and experience some of those things again. So we kind of believe everybody should enjoy what's happening now in their life, and they'll have all these stations of life that they'll have an opportunity to enjoy when the time comes. So saying all that, there are some advantages in terms of their academic and athletic career here at Alabama. First of all, it's an easier transition for a guy to start in the winter semester. You don't have football season coming up for a long time, not till August. They can make a better social and, I think, academic adjustment because there's less happening right now for them. I think that the idea that they can learn systematically in football what's expected of them through the off-season program as well as spring practice puts them a half a season ahead of the guys that come in the fall in terms of maybe having an opportunity to play. So I think those are probably, you know, some of the big advantages, and the disadvantages are only personal in terms of what they give up to do it.
Couple of questions, Coach. First, with regard to the player or two that may still be out there for you for this class, I know you can't mention them individually until they're signed, but can you just fill us in on what the contact rules are from here forward and how your staff will go about finishing the class?
Well, it's quiet. So we can't travel. We can't go on the road. We can't continue to recruit. They can come and visit us, and we can call. So those are kind of the rules.
Secondly, you mentioned in Mobile, the week of the Senior Bowl, that the 2012 class has already become a pretty big focus for the staff. I'm just curious, at what point does the next year's class start occupying more of your recruiting time than the current class?
Well, I think that we've been pretty much 90% full for 2 or 3 weeks. So probably as much of my time in January recruiting was spent on junior recruiting. And I think we all try to do that more now because of the rule that you're not allowed to go out in the spring. So really the time that a head coach is really condensed. You know, you got a couple weeks in December, a couple weeks in January, and that's it. There's no other time when you can go out on the road and go to high schools and see high school coaches. And I don't think that's a good thing, and I disagree with it, and I always disagree with it. But it is what it is. So I don't think there's any like, okay, here's when we start on next year. I think there's a constant transition, and you're recruiting guys for 2012, you're recruiting guys for 2013, and you're recruiting guys for 2011 all at the same time. And the rules are a little bit different for each one of those classes in terms of what you can and can't do, but you're involved in that process 365 days a year. Now, to me, today is always the day where I go jump into next year with both feet. I probably talked to 20 guys today on the phone for next year, and spent a lot of time, getting things going for next year today. Because really, everybody says you're really busy on signing day. You're just sitting there shaking your leg all day waiting for them papers to come in. There's nothing else you can really do about it. So it's like waiting to go out to warm up before a game. Everybody thinks you're really busy. You're just sitting there nervous about what's going to happen in the next hour.
Since there's going to be quite a few starters returning this year, did that make it any more difficult to recruit any of these guys who want to come in, and some of them who want to play right away?
Well, I think that probably one of the things that mislead and misguide players more than anything else is what we use as coaches to try to get a guy to come to our school because we tell him he can start next year. And I hear that a lot in recruiting. But yet, statistically, there are very few freshmen who start anywhere. Some play, and we've had a few start here, and we've had a few more play. So that is a very short-term and short-sighted decision for a guy making a decision about where he wants to develop a career, academically and athletically, with all the other factors that go into him developing as a person, student, and as a player. And it's more realistic to say, where am I going to be the best in 3 years? In 3 years, where will I develop the best? Best opportunity to get an education, best opportunity to develop as a person, best opportunity to be the best football player. So that's kind of how we approach it. And does that hurt us on some guys? I think maybe some guys that are a little bit immature, maybe feel a little bit entitled, and maybe have been told a lot by a lot of people around them that they should go start wherever they go. But I always feel like I'm being a little bit disloyal to the players we have here if I tell some guy in high school that he can come and start at tailback next year. I think that, Trent Richardson deserves a little more respect than that based on the football that he's played here and what he's done to help us be successful. And so have some of our other players. Now, will they be given every opportunity to play? Absolutely. And, we usually sort of pick our squad as to how we're going to coach our players a little more like a pro team. Because a pro team, you have to cut down to 47 guys or 53 guys or whatever it is, and then you can put 8 more guys on the practice squad. But you can't always keep the guys that are the absolute best players when you have to cut the team. If that were the case, you'd almost get rid of all the rookies. So we try to decide, these are the guys we're going to coach, these are the guys we're going to try to develop, and these are the guys we're going to play based on what they do in camp. And that's why we probably played a few more freshmen than most people, even though that's not what we try to sell in recruiting. But does it hurt you sometimes? I think only on the guy that is too immature to understand. But what about the issue that you have when you tell a guy he's going to start or he's going to play when he's a freshman and then he doesn't? Well, that creates a tremendous issue because that guy is very frustrated, feels betrayed, and probably is not going to develop like he should because his attitude's not going to be what it needs to be.
Coach, could you kind of talk about Jeffrey Pagan, specifically what he brings, but also that you signed a number of defensive linemen, and a lot of them are pretty good athletes. Could you just talk about that group?
How do you know?
Because I read your website.
Oh. Thought maybe you watched them.
Well, you got numbers. You can't argue with
And who said they were good athletes on the website? I'm
Some of them seem like hybrid kind of guys. I didn't know whether or not. But did you talk about the 6 defensive linemen?
you know I'm just messing with you, don't you? Well, I think that one of the things that was a goal and objective in this year's recruiting for defensive linemen is we were extremely athletic up front 2 years ago. And I don't know how many sacks we had for sure, but it was pushing 50. And even though we had some good players last year, and I was pleased with the progress that our defense made, throughout the course of the year, so I'm not in any way trying to be critical, we weren't quite as athletic. We didn't have as many good pass rushers. I mean, Marcel was athletic, Courtney's athletic, but we didn't have as many guys. And we were forced to play guys. The year before, on third down, we could put fresh guys in that were athletic because they didn't have to play all the time. And this year, the guys that were playing all the time still had to play on third down. So I'm saying all that to kind of make this point, that one of the goals in recruiting this year was to get more athletic up front on defense. More guys that could pass rush, more guys that could move and push the pocket in the middle and affect the quarterback. And Jeffrey Pagan can do that. He's a very good athlete. He can run. He's got good athleticism. And I'm sure, like all the freshmen that we recruited, he's going to go through some developing, personally and athletically both, like they all are. But I do think that we got several guys that sort of fit that profile. And I think that will help us. When will these guys be able to contribute? I'm not sure. And we've exited a lot of good defensive front guys. I mean, we had 3 guys from 2 years ago, all made a pro team. Marcel's probably going to be a top 10 guy. And Luther Davis was a senior. So we've had 5 guys that play with their hand in the dirt that have graduated in the last couple of years. So we needed to replace those guys and the quality of those guys. And I think this year we were able to get several guys who have that kind of athleticism.
Coach, I remember hearing an adage a long time ago that said that for every true freshman you had your starting lineup, it would equate to a loss. It seems like now that's probably antiquated. Do you agree, one, and do you think guys are ready quicker now, particularly true freshmen, and why, if so?
Well, what you were referring to is antiquated. But Woody Hayes made the statement, this was years ago, for every sophomore, when freshmen were ineligible, for every sophomore we play, we'll lose 1 game that starts.
Thank you.
All right, so it is antiquated, because if a sophomore is playing now, he's like he's a veteran. All right, so, but I think it's all about expectation of the players and of us as coaches. And I think when the numbers got limited, when they made freshmen eligible, there was more opportunity. And I think there's more guys that sort of develop physically, more good programs. But I think the big thing is the guys that can play when they're freshmen. It's usually not about their physical ability, it's more about their emotional maturity. Because the focus that it takes, the attention to detail, a lot of things that they're not really used to being better than everyone else, they haven't had to maybe pay as much attention to. And I think those are the critical factors that help guys develop quickly. And some positions are much more easily, some positions are easier to play as a freshman in terms of what you learn. And you don't have to learn the complete position like a running back and receiver. You can give a guy a part of what he's supposed to do and play him in those parts. If you're an offensive lineman, if you can't block every play, every front, every blitz, somebody's going to get killed. I mean, so you got to know it all. It's all or nothing. But you can play a running back who only knows certain plays. You can't really play a guy on defense who doesn't know the whole system and the whole scheme unless you just make him a pass rusher, designated pass rusher or something on third down. So there are some roles that you can fit guys into when they have special abilities, but Some positions are a little easier than others.
Are there guys like that in this
But I
class?
don't believe in that, because I think that we've had some freshmen that have played extremely well here and contributed to us being very successful. And if they're the best players, I have absolutely no problem playing them, and we have done that.
Are there guys like that in this class that you just signed?
Well, that's like making a prediction about a crapshoot. You know, who knows what's coming up? All these guys, most of these guys are capable of being able to do that. Do they have the maturity to do it? Will they develop quickly enough to do it? You know, that's what makes it a little bit of a crapshoot in terms of what their development is going to be. But that's the challenge for us, to be able to sort of give them the direction and the guidance to maybe enhance that development so more of these guys could play and contribute to the team in some kind of way.
Last year, in terms of filling your needs, you sounded like you were disappointed in the number of offensive linemen you signed and that it would become a priority this year. Did you fill those needs this year with offensive linemen, and can you talk about Douglas in particular?
Well, I think that that you have short-term and long-term solutions. I think that Aaron Douglas is a very, very good player and certainly will satisfy our need at left tackle short-term. We did not get a player in this class that can play left tackle long-term, and that would compete at that position. And to me, we are a little bit maybe we need tackle types. So we're very pleased with the player that we got, and he's probably going to be able to contribute more immediately because of his maturity, and he's already played in this league and all that. So that's a good thing. But we had 3 redshirt freshmen that started some games last year, 2 that started most of the games. So we have some good young offensive linemen that are coming up. I just think that left tackle spot has been a little bit of an issue. I mean, we recruited James Carpenter, who was a junior college guy. We've been trying to get some young guys to come in here, and then Aaron, you know, same thing, still trying to get some young guys to come in here. There were actually 3 guys today that we felt all could really be good players at that position, and you know, we ended up in second place, you know, all 3 times maybe. So
Coach, quarterback is kind of, for better or worse, sort of a unique position, and talk about the need to bring in a quarterback this year and what you saw in Philip Ely that led you to sign him.
Well, Philip Ely is a very good leader and been a very productive player for 2 years at a very good high school and has had a lot of success. And I think that he can develop into a very good player for us. Probably a lot like Greg in a way, very bright, very smart, good game manager. Doesn't make a lot of errors that hurts his team. But I think, you know, especially at quarterback, it gets difficult sometimes to attract certain kinds of guys because of the guys you have. And, you know, we entertained taking another quarterback this year, and we probably would have if the right guy was available to us, only because 4 is better than 3.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Touch that dial. We are going to break away, and we're going to come back and wrap up this edition of the Tider Insider Signing Day Special live from the Zone in Bryant-Denny Stadium right after this. Welcome back to the Zone inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. We're about to wrap up our 4th annual Tider Insider Signing Day Special. I'm Gary Harris along with Rodney Orr, and Rodney, it's called National Signing Day, but it's really just the first day of the national signing period, and it's not over for Alabama. They'll await the final word now on Cyrus Kwanjo, and then also in a couple of weeks, Jadeveon Clowney.
Yep, and those are the 2 dominant linemen on both sides of the ball, probably in high school football, Gary. And again, you add those 2 to this class, what Alabama already has, and you know, you'd have to say that it'd be difficult to say there's a better class in the country.
So it continues, and of course the class of 2012 already taking shape as well at the University of Alabama. So for Rodney Orr and our entire TITV signing day cast of helpers, and of course the folks here at The Zone, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. We're now going to join the First at 4 News, a condensed version right now with Claire Stewart.